Welcome everyone to Meditation Mount and to this view from the Mount. So let's begin by gathering ourselves from various parts of the world and creating a field of communion. And we can do this very simply by bringing ourselves to a point of stillness, focused and present in the now. Checking to see that the tension in our physical body has been released, that our emotional body is calm, and that our mind is free and clear. Now let us turn inwards and stand inside the silence of the heart. This is the place of deep communion. And we link heart to heart to heart to heart. All of us on this call, all people listening to the recording, all of us weaving together a matrix of love, compassion, expectancy. Thank you, everyone. So we built a safe container in which to place our questions and in which to inquire the way together. I'd like to begin today's broadcast by reading the announcement we sent out. Some of you may have received it in an email distribution. Others may have seen it posted on social media. I'll explain later why I want to read it. But anyway, here is what we sent out. These past few years have been unsettling times for many. The disruption to our normal rhythm and routine caused by the spread of COVID, civil unrest in various parts of the world, an alarming environmental crisis, plus a general sense of precariousness have left large portions of the population in a state of uncertainty, apprehension, and bewilderment. It is as though the normalcy we counted upon for reassurance is slowly disappearing. Our state of normality has been disrupted. What is normal? I would venture to say that life is always normal. It's just that the norms keep changing. These norms are the principles and values upon which we have based our society. We are now faced with an amazing opportunity to revisit these norms and to decide together what the new normal could look like if we come together in a spirit of cooperation as a human family. And then I ended it by saying, we will explore the norms that currently form the foundation of society and how to make the needed shift towards a more holistic approach to living based on a new set of principles and values. So we sent that out, and then within half an hour, we received an email with the following statement: "Rage against the new normal nonsense. Do not give away your freedoms." And I thought, wow, here's somebody who cares. So I reflected on what this person had written. It was a heartfelt declaration And so I took it seriously. And here's what I replied. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts and feelings. You state emphatically, do not give away your freedoms. Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. In fact, this was the very theme of the latest broadcast and blog from Meditation Mount, The Call of Freedom. You also use the phrase new normal nonsense. I do understand where you're coming from, and perhaps you misunderstood our position. We are not advocating returning to a new normalcy, but instead shaping a radical new normal. Norms are the principles and values that we choose to build our society upon, and it is obvious that the present norms do not serve the well-being of the whole. In one respect, we could say that everything is always normal, and therefore it is the norms associated with the current state of affairs that need to be replaced and upgraded. At Meditation Mount, we promote a radical rebuilding of society based on the principles and pathways and the power of creative meditation. This is the heart and soul of our mission in the world. And then she wrote back and said, thank you. I just don't like the phrase new normal, but I'll look at your links. And fair enough. And the reason I wanted to share this to begin the broadcast, because it's all too easy to engage in cosmetic change, to do something that looks new, but in fact is still based on the old norms that no longer serve us. So the new normal is not an excuse to refurbish the old. And this person's email caused me to reflect on how best to engage with you this evening on this subject. So I've decided I'm not going to be sharing lots of slides with information, images, diagrams. Today, I wish to share out aloud my own internal dialogue and to invite you to ponder along as we explore the various aspects of what it takes to build a better world together. By a better world, I mean one that is more just, joyful, and healthy for all life. So maybe the starting point is to return to this notion of cosmic change or cosmetic change. I said cosmic change. Well, that's what the real thing is about. It's about cosmic change, but we're talking about cosmetic change. So cosmetic change is like sticking a couple of wings on the back of a caterpillar and calling it a butterfly. With the creation of a radical new normal, we're talking about a very deep transformative process of change that can only occur when the old forms have broken down and dissolved. And if we examine the word radical, I believe that it's connected with the Latin word radix, meaning root. So a radical new normalcy expresses the deep truths of our spiritual heritage. So what do I mean by that? So let's go back to our friend the butterfly. We know now that the caterpillar goes through an alchemical process when it enters the pupa and turns into green soup. It enters a state of total dissolution of its old forms. However, inside this green soup, so we've been told, there are imaginal cells that carry the pattern and promise of the butterfly. In fact, they were present even in the caterpillar, but now they live inside the green soup that is the current state of being of our would-be caterpillar turned butterfly. So these imaginal cells, they guarantee that the new form, when it evolves, will more closely resemble the promise hidden in the heart of that aspect of creation, that creature. A creature means a product of creation. And you could think along the same lines when you're perceiving what it takes to imagine a new society, what it means to build something that is a radical new norm, a new normal, a new normalcy. So the imaginal cells that live at the heart of our humanity, I believe, are the trinity that have been carried through the eons. These are the three of truth, goodness, and beauty. This is the promise living inside the imaginal cells of the human being. And they guarantee that in the end, once we develop the consciousness and the capacity, we will be able to construct a society that delivers fully on this deep promise. There won't be a gap between the truth of life and how we agree on what truth is. There won't be a gap in what love is at its deepest sense and how we relate with each other lovingly. There won't be a gap between that which we create on the outside and the beauty on the inside. Beauty will be revealed. So the butterfly, in one respect, is the revelation of truth, goodness, and beauty that lived inside the caterpillar. Now, we've used these analogies many times, but they're useful. They serve a purpose. So think of it this way. At Meditation Mount, we've been asked to tune into the imaginal cells that reside inside the one soul of humanity, and through the power of focused group thought and imagination and a loving and caring heart, to shape the means of the new society, to create the seed thoughts, the spiritual architecture, whatever you want to call it, is to put in place at the inner level the new coding that will allow something new to be born. The good news is that each of us has the power to choose something different from the present state of affairs, and we have the power through imagination, focused thought, and compassion to actually build something that really is a healthy, just, and joyful state of affairs. So can you imagine a society based on the principles that we espouse here at Meditation Mount? So for those of you who have not been part of our previous broadcasts, let me just go over them again. So imagine a society that has baked into its foundation the principle of essential divinity, where every person, every living thing is held to be an aspect of the Creator. Inside of each creation, there's a spark of the Creator. We are fractals of this one life. Therefore, there is automatic respect for the other, because there is no other. We're simply aspects of the one life. So imagine a society based on the principle of goodwill. So goodwill we hold to be love in action. Goodwill is the love that flows and connects us all. You could think of it as connective tissue, the glue that holds everything together. You can think of goodwill as the love that is the lifeblood of all relationship. It's what flows throughout the system like the blood. It oxygenates relationships. And then think of the third principle. Imagine a society where the principle of unanimity was present, not just understood conceptually, but lived. That would mean that we would see everything as part of one living system, one coherent whole, one seamless web of life. Now, the implications of this are amazing, and I'd like to explore those in a minute. And we may not be able to go directly from where we are now to this preferred future of having it be built on these principles. Just like the caterpillar can't suddenly launch into becoming a butterfly by sticking wings on its back. Something has to die, something has to be dissolved, and something has to be reborn out of that dissolution. The solution And the resolution of today only happens through the process of dissolution. So imagine that the success of this new society, based on the principles, is the radical new normal. And it will be measured very differently. It will be measured by the degree to which there is mutual respect for all life, essential divinity, that love is the true currency of relationships within the ecosystem, goodwill, and that cooperation and not competition is the new behavior, unanimity. So building the new radical normal upon these three principles means that we hold life to be a multi-dimensional ecosystem that nourishes the whole. And it's not a multi-level marketing scheme that exploits the whole, where the top of the pyramid is successful at the expense of those at the bottom. So that sort of leads me into an examination of the underpinning beliefs and norms of our present society. I don't want to do this without blame or judgment, just dispassionately witnessing what's happening and what seems to be the glue that's attempting to hold our current society together. Now, accepted that at the heart of everything, there is the inherent goodness of humanity, that it is our nature, when we are not troubled, when we are centered, when we are aligned, it is our nature to be kind to each other. But at the moment, we are living off-center. So what I would say when I look at our current model is that it's a non-sustainable model. And let me start with an example of our own physical health. Imagine in your body, if one cell were to suddenly grow larger, larger, and take over the whole body, and make the whole body its host, we would end up with a sickness that we now know as cancer. We could view our current society as exhibiting early, middle, or even late stages of a cancer. So if the present economic forces and socio-political patterns were governing our individual body, how healthy will we be? Will we be healthy? Will we be close to death? So that's really the test. It's not to say capitalism is right or wrong, this is right or wrong, but to say if we were to take the models that we use to govern and run our whole society, if it's right for the whole, it's right for the part. Okay, if I were to run my life along the lines that we currently run our society, would part of me be impoverished? Would part of me be diseased? Would part of me be wanting? Would part of me be hurting? Would I be healthy? So now it goes back to how do we define health and how do we define success? So once again, I want to say this is not blaming or judging. This is simply witnessing, and this is my internal dialogue of this is what I see, and this is how I'm making sense of our current state of consciousness. We as a species are able to function at this level because this is our current state of awareness. Now, if you were to ask most people, define success in the world, probably for the last, 50, 100 years, people would say, well, it's the person who's amassed the most money or the most resources, the person who's become the head of a large organization or become a powerful political leader. And that model, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it means that success is that the one becomes bigger than everything else, all the other ones, which is a non-sustainable model. It's bankrupt from the beginning. So when we think of the new model, the new radical norm or normalcy, we're going to measure it very, very differently. We're going to measure success in the radical new normal by what serves the common good and the general welfare. How does my life and your life add to the overall goodness, flow of energy, richness? So richness could be the richness of an oxygenated blood rather than the richness of amassed gold. So this is something that we'll have to face at some time, and that sometime is here now. I believe we're facing it right now about what are our values? How do we measure success? I know that when I worked in the corporate world, I was a senior organization development consultant and executive coach, and I had some clients who were very successful, quote unquote, vice presidents and senior vice presidents of a Fortune 50 company. And I remember on occasion speaking with some of them where they had an image of success. Either they had imagined it themselves or society had offered it as a success model, but they had checked all the boxes. They were earning a lot of money. They were the head of an organization of 10, 12,000 people, but they weren't happy. They weren't healthy. Not all of them, but some of them had reached a point where that was not success. They were in a health crisis. Their relationship had broken down because they weren't giving enough time and energy to it. So this is a choice we have to make about what does it mean to be successful. Well, in the old model, it did mean putting in the hours and getting to where you thought you needed to get to prove to yourself and others that you had made it. It's the one showing the many how good it is. Now we're moving from the one as the I to that unit of consciousness that we call the we. And that can be very scary because no longer do you need to compete with each other. So competition actually now changes to a requirement for cooperation. So in the new radical normal, cooperation is required. And cooperation, you can still be competitive in the way that we strive to find new ways of improving society for the betterment of all. So I know I'm giving you an idealistic picture, and I understand that you can't jump from one model to another in one leap. It's not going to work. It may take a long time. It may take several iterations over hundreds of years or even 1,000 years to arrive at a society where truth, goodness, and beauty show up in all aspects of society. So let's revisit this, because if we look at the measures of success that will be applied to this radical new normal, they actually have a profound impact and can stir up a lot of concern in our current socio-political model, because the new radical normal could easily be accused of seeking to undermine society. So if we're saying, well, everything should be done for the good of the whole, in our current level of understanding, we do not yet understand this concept from a living systems perspective. It still seems political. So we translate that into politics. Oh, you must be talking socialism, or you must be talking communism or collectivism or whatever other ism you can think of. But we're not. We're talking about a healthy living system nurtures all of its parts, and all of its parts nurture the system. So let's go back to this fear of moving from I to we, and we've touched upon it in other broadcasts. The fear of the loss of individuality, the fear of the loss of identity. I know a lot of people have said, well, I don't like this group consciousness thing because I want to still be me. And I'm saying, you will. Moving from I to we does not take away from who you are. In fact, it's the opposite. It is an expanded sense of self. You're no longer limited to this individual unit. You realize that this individual unit, together with other individual units, is in fact a we. And this we is a self-consciousness. It is self-conscious, conscious of itself. Now, this changes all the rules. This changes the behaviors, because if I am you, why do I need to compete with you? If I am you and you are me, why do I need to go to war with you? Why do I need to grab when I can give? So we're moving from what we would call an egocentric to an ecocentric model. So egocentric to ecocentric. And eco is not just about the environment, the trees, the water. By ecocentric, I mean based on what serves the living system. So this radical new normal will serve the good of the whole. Because in this ecocentric state, it's a state of awareness where we know ourselves to be integral aspects of a multidimensional ecosystem called Gaia. So you could say that this radical new normal is a Gaian society. And a Gaian society is where everything serves and supports everything else as part of the one life. I believe I mentioned a couple of broadcasts ago that there is a way of describing the shift from being human to being Gaian. And if I look at it in my own life, Michael, as a friendly, caring human, can care for the trees, can care for the rocks, the fishes in the sea, the waters, other people. That's me as a caring human. When I step into becoming Gaian, then I understand that all of that, from the rocks to the angels, to the birds, to the bees, to the flowers, to all aspects of creation, actually live inside of me, and I live inside of them. So that's what it means to be a Gaian, to hold the whole of planetary life inside of me and to be held by the planetary life itself. That's a radical shift, because suddenly I am the system, expressing through an aspect of the system. And I know now there's a whole new movement that's just started called eco-governance, which has to do with how we govern ourselves based on the principles and guidelines of how living systems maintain health, how they sustain health over time. So this is not a party political broadcast this evening, although it may sound like it occasionally. But when you take these concepts and these imaginations of something new and you put them through the lens of our current socio-political thinking, it doesn't really compute. It's hard to imagine. So my question to myself and to us is, do we dare to unhook ourselves from the dependency of a model that we know is no longer sustainable, that in some cases is bankrupt, and it's bankrupting the common good, the collective resources? Are we sufficiently wise and sane, and do we have the daring to show up in a radical new way together? Well, circumstances forcing us with the ecological crisis, the environmental crisis, the political crisis, the crisis of the breakdown of relationship in our society. All of that is forcing us to revisit. So if I go back to my sessions with the vice presidents, after we had gone through the story of how they checked all the boxes but didn't feel successful, then we had the conversation about, okay, let's reimagine what it means to be successful based on what you feel inside of you, at the heart of your heart. Now, the question is, when I do that, when I come up with an answer, it may not be compatible with my surroundings, and therefore I have a choice to make. Do I stay in this line of business and help change it? Or do I go somewhere else and plant myself in a garden that is more conducive to the growth of what I feel is inside of me? That's a personal choice. It's not making anything wrong. It just says, where do I choose to grow based on what I sense is seeking to be born inside of me? Because the measure of my success at the end of my days is to what degree have I fulfilled the promise that lives inside of me? To what degree have we as a society fulfilled the promise that lives in the imaginal cells of this one human soul? And once again, I would say that one way of describing the essence of these imaginal cells, it's truth, goodness, and beauty. It's our destiny to reveal that in form. So yes, it could take a long time to achieve this, but unless we start sowing the seeds now, nothing will be different. And I think that's what I'm realizing. We can't keep kicking the can down the road because we'll be running out of resources to even make cans to kick down the road. And by the way, the road is breaking up and it won't be there much longer. So I know in the Bible it says, don't build your house on sand. I believe that some of the values that we currently have in place are like sand. They shift. They don't give us a secure foundation. And some of them may be even more akin to quicksand when we find ourselves drowning. So this is not a condemnation of our society. This is Michael attempting to witness what's happening and then to say, how can I help? How can I be of positive help? And last year at Meditation Mount, as we've shared several times, we chose two themes. We chose the theme of healing and of hope. Healing because as the old breaks down and dissolves, there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of scarcity. There is a lot of poverty, homelessness, pain, domestic abuse, the whole spectrum of pain. And so healing is what it will take to bring us to a new state of wholeness. And the other theme was hope, because without hope, nothing new will grow once you've created wholeness. So hope is the seed that contains the promise of the new radical norm. And healing is the process that will help, hopefully, bring us into greater compassion and loving understanding with each other. And then this year at Meditation Mount in 2022, we decided that if we were to take those two themes of hope and healing, they would meet at a synthetic point at the top of the triangle, and it would be called regeneration. So you could say then that creating this continuous cycle of societies is an upward spiral of regeneration. And we know from nature that things only generate after the old has died back. So you have these three stages of death or disappearance. Then you have reappearance in the spring. And this cycle continues. So what I believe we're witnessing at the moment is those signs of the decomposition of an old model. And yet the new model has not sufficiently emerged to reassure us that it's stable enough, solid enough. And this is where faith comes in, or trust in life. There comes a point where you dare to trust in life. One of the words of power on the path, on the spiritual path, is to dare. Daring means leaping, not recklessly, but knowing that this is how life leaps into the new. And it's said that you can't leap a chasm in 2 bounds. You have to do it in 1. So I believe we're at the point now, the point of departure, where we need to dare to address all the things that are showing up in our society, not to necessarily blame, although I believe that we share collectively the responsibility for creating this. So I'm not so much blaming, but I'm saying there is a shared responsibility for the state of the world. And what we can do to help is to choose to put in place this radical new normal, starting with ourselves. So what does Michael's life look like if I were to truly put in place the principle of essential divinity? It means when I meet you on the street or in the supermarket or wherever it may be, I don't judge you. I don't make up stories of who you are. Beyond the outer appearance, looking into your eyes, I see another aspect of the one. I see the Creator in front of me, all in different stages of development, unfoldment, maturity. But at the heart of everything, I see essential divinity. What if goodness were to govern my life? Then I would feel this natural urge to open myself and allow the love that lives inside of me, which is an unlimited resource, I would allow that to flow out. And if unanimity governed my life as an individual, as Michael, I would know that whatever I did, I needed to pay attention and make sure that it caused no harm to anything or anyone, and also no harm to myself. So this is a very powerful ideal. But to make the ideal real, it has to be lived. And we've mentioned before that these 3 principles of essential divinity, goodwill, and unanimity, you can't just put them in place. You have to live into them, which is why they have their attendant pathways. So at Meditation Mount, we talk about the 6 principles and pathways. So in order to live into essential divinity, we follow the pathway of spiritual approach. That doesn't mean necessarily religious. It means an approach that seeks to enter more deeply into relationship with our essential nature. We could do this as an artist, as a spiritual practitioner, as a scientist. It's any path that leads us into a deeper understanding of our essential nature. And then the pathway that needs to be taken to lead us into a lived experience of goodwill is one that's called the pathway of right human relations. So that's my practice. I practice right human relations, how I show up, how I respond to you when we meet. But it's not just between and among humans. Right human relations is how we relate to the whole system of Gaia. How I treat the trees and the shrubs, the animals, the birds. And the pathway that leads into a lived experience of unanimity, the principle of unanimity, is one that we call group endeavor. And in fact, it's the one that we're focusing on now, because these 6 principles and pathways are divided up into 2 months. And every 2 months, we change from a pathway to a principle to a pathway to a principle to meditate on and go more deeply into it. And from April the 21st to June the 20th, Meditation Mount and other groups around the world who are connected with creative meditation are focusing on group endeavor. So group endeavor says, to the degree that we're able to cooperate and work together, we suddenly realize that this is the natural way of being. It's a non-competitive approach to life. It's cooperation. And as we engage in this pathway of group endeavor, we suddenly realize that we're part of a unified field. And this principle of unanimity comes alive in us. So that's what I mean by imagining a society where these principles are alive. It's not because they are engraved in stone and put on some temple. They have to be lived into. And I guess what I'm asking myself and asking you all to consider is, maybe it's time that we began to seriously put this in place. Not that we're not doing our best, but do we dare to up the ante and to live our hearts out? I believe then that the foundation for this radical new normal is in fact soul living, living as the soul, from the soul. And these are soul qualities: an essential divinity, goodwill, and unanimity. That is, and these are, characteristics of the soul. So when I reflect on all of this is sort of, as I said to begin with, I'm really sharing with you my inner dialogue this past week, what I've been reflecting on. And I invite you to do the same. And I came to a point at the end where I thought, I really, truly hope in this new society, may it be normal to care. May it be normal to give and forgive. May it be normal to see ourselves as one living system where all life is sacred, where all life is to be respected, honored, and celebrated, where love is what is seeking to incarnate on this planet. Can we be the carriers of love? Can this radical new normalcy or normality or radical new normal be the vehicle for bringing truth, goodness, and beauty into the world? And how do we bridge this gap between this ideal and current reality? It requires our daring, our working together, and it requires an understanding that these things take time. I remember in Scotland visiting one of these wonderful rhododendron gardens. And in the gardens were these old trees, maybe 300 years old, and they were planted by someone. And the person that planted them did not have the benefit of sitting under the tree and being shaded by it or leaning against it. So all that we do is for future generations. And what we benefit from is what others who have gone before us have planted. Now, if there's a break in that chain of planting, there's going to be a section of time where it feels like we're in a desert. There is no greenery. There is no shade from the harshness of the sun that beats down, the harshness of the hatred that beats us down. So that's another reason why we need to plant these trees, need to plant these seeds of a new society now, because otherwise we're breaking this chain. And this chain is the chain that ensures the regenerative cycle. This is how life seems to work in a very seasoned and cyclical way. So let's take a deep breath together. And even though you've been listening to sort of what's been going on my inside, I hope it stimulates some pondering on all of our parts. And then whatever you come with, you don't have to copy anything that I've said, but seek the truth of what is living inside of you. Seek the truth of what you believe would be a better society. And then let's compare notes, compare field notes, and let's get on with the practice of sowing and tending these new seeds. So it's something more just and joyful will grow in the future. So let me end by inviting us to stand together again in this group heart, our field of communion. May we dare to care. May we dare to give and forgive. May we dare to treat each other with the respect and the honor that each of us has, because we are a fractal of the one life. We are a sacred representation of the living system that is the life of our planet. So let us breathe out whatever we've garnered as far as wisdom, insight today. Let's send it out into the ethers like seeds. And let's send out our good thoughts to create more nourishing conditions in which these seeds can grow. And let's approach the planting and the growing of a new society with courage, with compassion, with caring. May we step into our Gaiahood together. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate this time together. And the imaginal cells of our one soul of humanity are holding the promise of who we are. It's simply up to us to dare to be that promise. Thank you. And good night and blessings from Meditation Mount.